Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me.
The dragon's roar echoed across the valley, a sound so deep and primal that the very earth seemed to tremble beneath its power. The citizens of Camelot paused, their everyday activities forgotten, as they stared toward the mountains where the ancient beast lay. It was a sound they had heard only in legends, at the cry of Dormaris, the dragon who had once protected the kingdom. But this cry wasn't one of protection. It was filled with anger, betrayal, and pain. King Arthur stood on the balcony of the castle, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He could feel it too, the deep shift in the air, the tension that gripped the land as if it were holding its breath. Behind him, the doors opened, and Merlin entered the room, his face pale and his eyes wide with urgency. "It's begun, Arthur," Merlin said quietly, his voice laced with worry. Arthur didn't turn around. "Dormaris has awoken." Merlin nodded, stepping forward to stand beside his king. "But not as a friend this time. His heart is filled with rage, and it will consume Camelot if we don't stop it." Arthur finally turned to face Merlin, his jaw clenched. "Morgana, there's no doubt," Merlin said, a bitter edge to his words. "She has found a way to manipulate Dormaris' anger, and she plans to use him against us. If she succeeds, Camelot will be ashes before dawn." Arthur's hands tightened on the stone railing. "I thought the pact with the dragon would hold." "It has for centuries." "Why now?" "Because we've forgotten our promises," Merlin said, his voice low. "The ancient bond between Camelot and Dormaris was forged with blood, trust, and respect. But as the years passed, we grew complacent. We relied on the dragon's protection but gave nothing in return. Dormaris feels abandoned, betrayed by the kingdom he once swore to protect." Arthur closed his eyes for a moment, the weight of his failure settling on his shoulders. "So, what do we do?" Merlin placed a hand on Arthur's shoulder. "We have to restore the pact, Arthur. You must win back the dragon's trust. If anyone can do it, it's you." Arthur sighed deeply, rubbing his temples as the enormity of the task loomed before him. "I don't know if I'm worthy of that trust, Merlin." "You are," Merlin said firmly. "You were chosen to be king because of your heart, your honor, and your courage. If anyone can speak to Dormaris and make him see reason, it's you." Arthur nodded, though doubt still lingered in his chest. "Then let's waste no time. We must find Dormaris before Morgana fully binds him to her will." Merlin gave a grim smile. "It won't be easy. Morgana's magic has grown stronger, darker. She's not the same woman you once knew." Arthur's jaw clenched again at the mention of his half-sister. "I should have seen this coming. I should have stopped her before she ever gained this power." "We'll stop her now," Merlin said, his voice resolute. "But first, we must save the dragon." The journey to Dormaris' lair was treacherous, both physically and emotionally. Arthur and Merlin traveled alone, knowing they could not afford to risk the lives of their knights in such a dangerous mission. They left Camelot under the watchful eye of Sir Launcelot, instructing him to protect the city and its people should the worst come to pass. The path led them through the Valley of Flames, a place spoken of only in whispers. It was said to be haunted by creatures of fire, ancient spirits that guarded the approach to Dormaris' resting place. The valley was desolate, filled with jagged rocks and scorched earth, as if the land itself had been burned by the dragon's rage. As they descended into the valley, Arthur could feel the heat rising from the ground, the air thick and suffocating. Merlin walked beside him, his staff glowing faintly with magic to ward off any threats that might approach. "Stay alert," Merlin warned. "Morgana's influence is everywhere. She'll try to stop us before we even reach the dragon." Arthur drew his sword, the legendary Excalibur, its blade gleaming in the dim light. "Let her try," he said grimly. They hadn't traveled far when the ground began to shake. From the shadows, creatures of flame emerged, their bodies flickering like living embers. They were small at first, barely the size of wolves, but their numbers grew quickly, surrounding Arthur and Merlin in a ring of fire. Arthur raised his sword, the heat from the creatures making his skin burn. "What are these things?" "Fire spirits," Merlin said, his voice tense. "Servants of Dormaris, though they've likely fallen under Morgana's control, we'll need to deal with them quickly." Without hesitation, Arthur charged forward, his sword flashing as he cut through the first wave of creatures. The fire spirits hissed and screeched, their forms dissipating into smoke as they were struck down. But more kept coming, their flames growing hotter, their attacks more fierce. Merlin raised his staff, summoning a gust of wind to blow the spirits back. "They're trying to wear us down. We can't stay here and fight them all." Arthur nodded, realizing the truth of Merlin's words. "Then we push through." Together, they fought their way through the horde of fire spirits, Arthur's sword flashing and Merlin's magic creating barriers of wind and water to douse the flames. It was a brutal, exhausting fight, but finally, they broke free of the valley, leaving the creatures behind. Panting and sweating, Arthur wiped the soot from his brow. "That was too close." Merlin nodded, his face pale from exertion. "Morgana is testing us. She knows we're coming." Arthur sheathed Excalibur, his mind racing. "Then we'll have to be ready for whatever comes next." They reached the Cavern of Echoes by nightfall. The entrance to the cavern was hidden behind a waterfall, its rushing waters masking the foreboding energy that lay within. Merlin led the way, parting the waters with a spell so they could enter the dark, twisting tunnels. The air inside the cavern was thick with magic, every sound amplified and distorted. Arthur could hear whispers, faint and indistinct, as if the walls themselves were speaking to him. As they ventured deeper, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, until they were unmistakable. "Arthur," a voice hissed from the shadows. "Arthur, you cannot win. You are not worthy." Arthur froze, his hand instinctively going to the hilt of his sword. "Who's there?" Merlin glanced at him, his expression grave. "The cavern tests those who enter. It shows them their deepest fears, their darkest thoughts. You must ignore it, Arthur." But the voice persisted, growing louder. "You are a failure, Arthur. You abandoned your sister, and now she will destroy everything you hold dear." Arthur gritted his teeth, trying to push the voice away, but it was as if the cavern was inside his mind, echoing his doubts and fears. He saw visions of Morgana standing over the ruins of Camelot, Dormaris laying waste to the kingdom, his people fleeing in terror. And in every vision, he saw himself, standing powerless, unable to stop it. "Arthur," the voice taunted, "you are not fit to be king. You will fall, and Camelot will fall with you." Arthur's breathing quickened, his heart pounding in his chest. For a moment, the weight of his failure, his doubt, nearly overwhelmed him. But then he heard another voice, a calm and steady one. "Arthur, focus. These are not real." It was Merlin. He stood beside Arthur, his hand on his shoulder, grounding him. "Remember who you are. Remember why we're here." Arthur closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He focused on Merlin's words, pushing the dark visions away. Slowly, the whispers faded, the voices growing quieter until they were nothing but distant echoes. When he opened his eyes again, the cavern was still, and the path before them was clear. "You did it," Merlin said softly. Arthur nodded, though his heart still raced. "I won't let Morgana win," he said, his voice firm. "No matter what she throws at me, I'll protect Camelot." Merlin smiled. "Good. Now let's find Dormaris." They reached the dragon's lair at dawn. The entrance was a massive, jagged opening in the side of the mountain, the stone blackened from centuries of the dragon's fire. Arthur could feel the heat radiating from within, a constant reminder of the power that lay just beyond the threshold. "Are you ready?" Merlin asked, his voice quiet. Arthur took a deep breath and nodded. "I have to be." Together, they entered the lair, the air growing hotter with each step. The cavern was vast, the walls lined with glittering gems and ancient relics from a time long forgotten. And in the center of it all, curled around a mountain of treasure, lay Dormaris. The dragon was massive, its scales a deep, iridescent black that shimmered with every breath it took. Its eyes, glowing like molten gold, fixed on Arthur and Merlin as they approached. A low growl rumbled through the cavern, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Arthur stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "Dormaris," he called, his voice steady despite the fear. Arthur's resolve hardened as he looked out over Camelot. The once vibrant kingdom was now shrouded in fear, its citizens whispering tales of doom. He turned back to Merlin, determination burning in his eyes. "All right, Merlin, I'll do it." "But how?" Merlin's gaze was thoughtful, a glimmer of hope shining through his worry. "There are ancient rituals, forgotten by most, but not by me. We need to perform a ceremony that can rekindle the pact between you and Dormaris. It will require a journey to the heart of the dragon's lair, where you will need to show the dragon that you are sincere." Arthur nodded, taking in the gravity of the mission. "Where do we start?" "First, we must gather the relics that were once part of the pact," Merlin explained. "There are three: the sapphire amulet of truth, the dragon's scale of valor, and the chalice of unity. Each of these relics holds a part of the magic needed to restore the bond. We must find them and bring them to Dormaris." With a renewed sense of purpose, Arthur and Merlin set off on their quest. Their journey took them through dense forests, over treacherous mountains, and across desolate plains. Each step was fraught with danger, not only from the harsh elements but also from creatures that seemed to have been stirred into activity by the dragon's anger. Their first destination was an ancient temple hidden deep within a misty forest. According to Merlin, the sapphire amulet of truth was kept within its depths, guarded by enchantments and formidable creatures. As they approached the temple, the air grew colder, and the forest fell silent, as if holding its breath. Inside the temple, they navigated through darkened corridors and booby-trapped chambers. Merlin's magic was crucial, illuminating their path and dispelling traps with deft incantations. They encountered a fearsome guardian, a spectral beast with eyes that glowed like embers. The battle was fierce, but Arthur's skill with a sword and Merlin's spells managed to subdue the creature. At last, they reached the inner sanctum, where the sapphire amulet rested on a pedestal. It was a beautiful gem, glowing with an inner light that seemed to pulse with ancient magic. Arthur took it reverently, feeling a connection to the pasta linked to the dragon and the promise made long ago. Their next journey led them to the dragon's scale of valor, located in the depths of a mountain cave. This scale, once part of Dormaris's own hide, was said to be imbued with his strength and courage. The cave was a perilous place, filled with treacherous paths and hidden traps. But with Merlin's guidance and Arthur's determination, they navigated the cave's labyrinth and reached a chamber where the scale was enshrined. Retrieving the scale proved challenging, as it was protected by an ancient guardian spirit, a creature of stone and fire. Arthur's battle with the guardian was grueling, a test of his strength and bravery. The fight pushed him to his limits, but he emerged victorious, taking the scale with a mix of pride and exhaustion. The final relic, the chalice of unity, was said to be held in a remote, ancient castle, now in ruins and overgrown with vines. The chalice symbolized the unity between humans and dragons, and it was said to hold the essence of their shared bond. As they approached the castle, they felt a sense of foreboding. The once grand structure was now a desolate place, its walls cracked and crumbling. Inside, they faced one last challenge, a maze of illusions created by powerful magic. Merlin's knowledge of enchantments was crucial in navigating the maze, and together, they managed to reach the central chamber where the chalice was kept. It was an ornate, silver vessel, covered in intricate runes that seemed to shimmer with a soft light. With all three relics in their possession, Arthur and Merlin made their way back to Camelot. Their journey had tested their resolve and endurance, but their bond had grown stronger. They were prepared for the final challenge, confronting Dormaris and restoring the ancient pact. The dragon's lair was a formidable place, situated in a volcanic region far from Camelot. As they approached, the heat from the molten lava and the stench of sulfur filled the air. The entrance to the lair was a cavernous opening, and as they stepped inside, the roar of Dormaris reverberated through the walls. Arthur and Merlin made their way deeper into the lair, their steps echoing in the vast chamber. Dormaris awaited them, his massive form silhouetted against the fiery backdrop. The dragon's eyes burned with an intense anger, a palpable force that made the very air tremble. Arthur stepped forward, holding the sapphire amulet of truth high. "Dormaris," he called out, his voice steady despite the enormity of the situation. "We have come to restore the pact. I have the relics that will prove our sincerity." Dormaris's eyes narrowed, his gaze fixed on the amulet. "You come here now, when I have been betrayed and abandoned." His voice was a deep rumble, filled with hurt and anger. Arthur met the dragon's gaze, his heart pounding. "We have made mistakes, but we seek to make amends. I offer you the relics of our pact, and with them, I vow to restore the bond between us." Merlin stepped beside Arthur, holding up the dragon's scale of valor and the chalice of unity. "We have faced great challenges to bring these to you," Merlin said. "We hope that these symbols of our respect and commitment will restore what was lost." Dormaris's gaze shifted to the relics, and for a moment, his fierce expression softened. The dragon moved closer, his immense form casting shadows over the chamber. "You come with courage and determination, but words alone will not mend the rift that has grown between us." Arthur stepped forward, kneeling before the dragon. "Please, Dormaris, we are ready to prove our worth. We will honor the pact and ensure that our actions match our promises." Dormaris's eyes flickered with a mix of skepticism and hope. "Very well. To restore the pact, you must undergo a trial. You must show that your hearts are true and that you are willing to fight for what is right." The trial was grueling, a test of bravery, loyalty, and sacrifice. Arthur and Merlin faced challenges that pushed them to their limits, but they persevered, driven by their desire to restore the ancient bond. Each test brought them closer to the dragon, revealing their true intentions and commitment. When the trial was over, Dormaris regarded them with a new respect. "You have proven yourselves worthy. The pact will be restored, but remember this: trust is fragile, and it must be nurtured. Let this be a new beginning for both humans and dragons." Arthur and Merlin bowed, their hearts filled with relief and gratitude. "Thank you, Dormaris. We will honor this new beginning." As they left the dragon's lair, the skies over Camelot began to clear, and the tension in the air dissipated. The kingdom's fear gave way to hope, and the citizens began to rebuild, knowing that their bond with the dragon had been renewed. Arthur and Merlin returned to Camelot, their journey complete. The kingdom would face new challenges, but with the renewed pact and the lessons learned, they were ready to face whatever came next. The ancient bond between humans and dragons was restored, and with it, a new era of unity and strength began.